Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan for another week. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And if you are watching the video feed, you can already see him, but we are once again joined by a fantastic guest, good friend of the show, Mr. Bryan Crossland.
Hey, thanks.
Hey, Bryan, how you doing?
Doing good. Glad to be back.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us again. I think we're gonna have a fun little show. We of episode 102.
Yay.
We hope, dear listener, that you enjoyed our discussion of Jane Austen film adaptations of Jane Austen. I should probably say it like that.
Or at least the 10 of you who listened to that enjoyed it. Thanks.
Yep.
True fans.
Indeed.
For sure. That's truly is down to the diehards there.
It was weird. The one show that my father has reposted and posted about this show on his social media, not like my dad, but my dad has a certain group of friends and stuff like that, like our parents do. Mm-hmm. For only show my dad has ever shared or shared to his group was our Jane Austen show from last week. So
it was a fantastic show. It was super fun to do.
It was super fun. We again thank Dana so much for joining us. It was super great to have her on. As it is super great to have Bryan on. Bryan, of course, was on for a Star Wars discussion.
Oh yeah.
It feels like 30 years ago, but it was just maybe about
within the year.
Yeah,
it was in the COVID era.
It was in this pandemical time that we have.
Yeah.
But this week, this week we have. I love this subject that Ryan shout out to me.
Quickly pulled out of a hat when
we had another subject went. We did have another show, but then which is still coming. That show will still happen.
Yeah, we can say what it is because we teased it a couple weeks back because Rob told us we should tease more. And that yes. Do you see why we don't, Rob? Jeez, Rob.
Because now we seem like liars. No, we have a show coming
Nothing
up where
ever good has come of anyone trying to do what Rob thinks is best. I'll just say that officially. Anyway, we were going to do Ausploitation films or Australian exploitation films.
Oh, that's right.
With a couple of really special guests. It's one of whom is hip deep in those films himself, so we're really looking forward to that. But our good buddy Michael, who a lot of listeners know, got a gig starring in a movie, so he's busy doing that, and he wasn't able to join us. And he was like, like a true movie star. He's like, go on without me. And we were like, nah, I think
we'll wait. I mean, our other special guest is thanks to our good friend Michael. So we really would like to have them both on to talk.
All of us together talking about that. But the side effect of that is we got Bryan here, who we've been trying to do a show with for a while because we have a lot of fun together. And I think this is. I haven't seen all these either, right? So don't feel bad that there's a couple you haven't seen.
Yeah,
this is just we just picked this era because I think it represents we'll talk about it.
We're gonna. I'm calling.
We're not all experts on every one of these, and these won't be deep dives.
No, anything. And like we have said many times on this show, we tend to focus this show. We sort of have a cutoff of of the time that Ryan and I have been alive. We don't delve back into the 30s, 40s, 50s. We rarely will bring up those those movies.
It's not that there aren't awesome ones or even ones that we loved back then. It's more that this is about sort of our lifetime as movie fans, and right around the time we were born, just before really 69-ish, there really was a paradigm shift in filmmaking for the most part.
Yep.
And then all the other shifts that have happened along the way, we've been a part of in our lives. So I feel like we speak more with authority on those types of movies. And this is a show about an era, and it's a kind of a show about the movie business. So it'll make for a fun switch to discuss that a little bit.
Yeah. So what we're going to be talking about today, I'm kind of calling this when Disney was a bummer. Because there was a time when Disney didn't own everything. In fact, there was a time when Disney was kind of struggling and had to fend off. This
was that time. This is the epitome of their struggle. In fact,
it was the time post Walt Disney. Walt Disney dying, Roy Disney taking over, and continuing, and much of the focus for Disney was their animated films and their theme parks. The two.
What would Walt do?
What would Walt do? And then after Roy Disney, Walt Disney's son-in-law? Was it what? It was Ron.
Ron Miller. Is that
Ron Miller? Yeah, I think he was a son-in-law. I'm trying to think. I think it was Walt's son-in-law. They handed the reins over to Ron Miller, former football player Ron Miller.
Yeah.
And Ron wanted to take a little bit of a different direction. He did. Yeah, and he certainly did. Yeah. So much to the chagrin of other executives in Disney, Ron really thought that Disney should be in the business of making more adult-oriented film. Not adult films like
they're not adult films, but more
sophisticated, darker.
Yeah.
Taking
the reins off the family only subject matter, even though every one of these is a family film to one degree or another, by any way that we judge it.
The fact that there was, when if somebody like it was Ron maybe even, but like went to a reporter and it was like, imagine a PG Disney film. And that was like a seismic, like, what?
That was a huge shift, especially with the films that the list you sent me. Like, one of them is the first PG film that Disney ever did.
Very first,
right? Yeah, that's where the list starts. I got a question for you guys to show you a little bit of the predicament that they were in. You may be able to do this better than I did. I had to research to answer this question. But other than anything on our list, I think there's only one, maybe two things that qualify. What is your favorite 70s Disney movie?
Well, for me, and I've talked about this. Black Hole. I mean, it's on our list. Black Hole is.
I said that's not on our list.
Okay, so then mine would be.
Got to be not.
Mine would thanks for spoiling the list and not listening to my.
Well,
question.
Whatever. No, but if we're talking about favorite, that's not on the list. Mine would be Condor Man.
Oh, but that's semi from the same era too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I count it as part of this era, Condor Man.
It is. That's why it kind of doesn't count. The point is, it's really hard to pick a favorite 70s Disney movie because they had almost no hit movies in the 70s.
Yeah, that's my struggle. Is I'm looking at like from the 60s.
My favorite, if you want to know, is The Rescuers, 77.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Which to me was the last great Disney movie of the era before they just changed their whole business model.
Yeah.
I love, the Disney's Robin Hood, I think is late 70s. Would that
is it
qualify? I think.
If it's in the 70s of any kind, it will qualify. It doesn't have to be late.
All right.
I thought The Rescuers was 80s, but if that's 70s, then that would I love that film.
Same year as Star Wars and The Spy Who Loved Me.
Wow.
Yeah. Look. Just give me a second here while it's loading. Yeah, it was 73.
Holy crap.
Yeah. Okay. And The Rescuers has an outstanding reputation, but it wasn't that big a hit at the time because it was it was viewed as somehow antiquated compared to the shift that been happening post Jaws in films.
Right.
So these group of movies, starting with Black Hole, like Joel said, it's an answer to what was happening in the industry. It's an attempted answer to it. But there are struggles that go along with it, because even though they wanted to make PG movies, and I remember what they said about one of these movies. I should save this for when we're talking about it, but they're like, some idiot at Disney said, "This could be our Exorcist," is what they said.
I know
In some meeting. Yeah, and if they'd have, but Disney never, even throughout all this, didn't have the balls to make a version of the Exorcist, and never would, and didn't even really want that from them. So
not even Ron Miller wanted to go that far. I mean, he wanted to tame things down. He wanted to go into that PG realm, but he didn't want to go like into the close to the R-rated realm, or, oh my gosh, this is so terrible, like kids are running out of the theater type.
Right. And you had these multi-generations of Disney executives and artists who just dramatically resisted the idea of doing anything dark. Not so much the philosophy of it, as each individual thing was met with such resistance throughout this entire era, that you ended up with these films that were, we'll use the term schizophrenic, because even the best of them are at odds with themselves in really, really key ways. So
all right, well, let's jump into it, since I already spoiled the first film we're going to be talking about.
Spoiled it.
Well,
that's okay.
It's a very important
that film probably is the shingle for the episode, so you probably didn't spoil it.
I mean, it's that big of a deal to me. I still have my Black Hole lunchbox. And and so that's the movie. Black Hole, 1979. Fresh off the Star Wars, proving that sci-fi isn't box office, that sci-fi has a place in the movies. We got the Black Hole. I love
Black Hole with something like 14 different credited screenwriters. Exaggerating a little bit, but Black Hole.
A couple screenwriters, several story by. I mean, it started out as a short story, and then it came across. It went through iterations iterations before they finally settled on doing it.
It was something they had kicking around before this idea. So, like a lot of the sci-fi films of 1979, Alien, and there's a bunch of them. The Star Trek, the motion picture. They all got greenlit and budgeted big right as Star Wars was hitting. It was like, what do we have in the can that we can just start work on immediately to take advantage of this new trend and to have the next Star Wars? And all those films were greenlit really for that reason. This one most of all. But what they had was this weird sort of Forbidden Planet / 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea hybrid script with this just unbelievably strange and philosophical and ethereal ending attached to it. And what some of these writers, we'll never know who was responsible for what. The list is really, really long. But some of these writers were like, oh, it has a talking robot. Let's add a sidekick robot, and let's have the robots be like the Star Wars robots, and let's make them as preachy and annoying as possible, and and that'll be funny. Like there's this, and be sure that one of them is played by an English person, because the British butler robot in Star Wars was so popular. There's all these there's all this stuff in it that you can just tell is, let's steal this from this and add it to this. And what you ended up with was a really tonally strange film that it certainly has some of that darkness in it. I don't think anyone can argue with that. There's a couple of rather grisly deaths that our heroes suffer, and there's just there's a whole idea of this whole idea of like robot slavery and madness at the edge of space that does come across, even if it's a bit melodramatic in the film. But what it has, the most of what it has that sucks, because I don't mind that like they don't take oxygen or behavior in a vacuum seriously. Like for me, I'm into science and everything, and I like movies that show us all that legitimately as they can, but I'm like, don't let that get in the way of a good story. You know, one of the coolest visuals in the whole movie is this giant flaming meteorite like crashes into this ship.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then it's the ship is the dumbest ship ever. It's all built with these massive high-ceilinged waiting rooms and huge atriums, which to keep filled with oxygen for only one guy who breathes. Yeah, but look at it. It's also the coolest
it's all glass.
ever.
It's so cool, but it's
it's just stupid. It makes no sense as an actual spaceship.
And round
watching
meteorites.
that flaming meteor rolling at you down this huge corridor, and watching our heroes sort of just narrowly escape it while they're crossing it, it's awesome. It's huge, and it sort of sparks the imagination. So from a design standpoint, even though that ship is dumb, it's super dumb. It's beautiful. It has this weird Art Deco sort of design scheme to it, and it's this wonderful, like the idea of what people in the 50s thought a big spaceship would be, and it has that sort of magic to it. And I've talked enough. Anyway,
I love it. I mean, it's got a great cast. I mean, Maximilian Schell, essentially,
Yeah, but does it? When was Maximilian Schell ever good in anything once he got fat? Never.
Well, in terms of
he's a scenery chewing, crazy love boat guest star over actor is all he was at this point in his career. And I say that I read a review actually, and it said, featuring Ernest Borgnine, Anthony Hopkins, Yvette Mimieux, and Robert Forrester, all at differing awkward phases in their careers.
Sure. Yeah. Anthony Perkins.
Sorry, not Hopkins.
Anthony,
that's important.
Anthony, you were talking about some of the grisly deaths. Anthony
none
Perkins.
More grisly than Anthony Perkins.
Except it wasn't totally, right? Going back, I watched that film again.
Well, they don't show anything.
There's no blood. There's no blood. Very Disney. No blood.
But that's irrelevant. We talk about it on the show. It's not what you saw. It's what happened. And what happened is grisly and horrible.
Yeah, very rarely do you ever see the slow death, just where it's impending and everyone is just
right. But a guy gets ripped apart in his torso by motorized propellers is grisly.
One of the great, and in terms of like scary robots. Or villainous robots. Maximilian right there.
That stuck with me from being a kid forward
spectacular.
For a while.
The creature design or the robot design in this, I thought, on the ship, on the Cygnus, was great. Maximilian, I think the other
Maximilian's pretty special. I can't argue with that. The Century robots, who the people in those suits can't even walk in them, they're less impressive. They may look cool on a lunchbox, but in the movie they're the least threatening space robots I think I've ever seen.
Like Captain Star standing for Special Troops Arms Regiment.
He's the coolest one. Note that he stands still his entire appearance in the movie.
Yep.
And of course Slim Pickens. Uncredited Slim Pickens as Bob.
Is he uncredited? No.
He's credited now. Like they put him, but originally he was not. His voice was not credited in the.
No, his name doesn't show up in the opening credits, but he's credited at the end of the movie, and always was. I'm quite sure.
Well, okay, then the information here is wrong. You mean something on the internet? This is rare. Let's mark this down. Something on the internet might have been incorrect.
Really?
No.
Well, he's a big enough star compared to these other people, and the role is big enough that his name maybe should appear at the beginning, which it doesn't.
Old Biosanitation Battalion LF-28. Good old Bob.
Yeah. There's a lot of cheese spread throughout the film. There's no doubt about it.
And nothing's cheesier than Slim Pickens.
But it should tell you something that as a film, even as a sci-fi film, we're still talking about this, almost 40 some years later.
Yeah. And it's a sci-fi film that came out in 1979 when we were very impressionable. It came out in this era of the fantastic films, and all these films we're going to talk about, they all slide, even as awkward as they might be when we look at them as a group of Disney films, they all slide in quite comfortably alongside the other fantasy and adventure, sci-fi adventure films of their era, no question.
Yeah,
and Black Hole isn't.
We got three hard hitters in that year in '79, right? You got Star Trek, you've got Alien, and you had Road Warrior. Like three different views of the world.
Slim Pickens and Roddy McDowell were both uncredited by design, Joel, in that film.
Really?
So you weren't wrong.
Okay,
but your take on it was kind of incorrect. They did it in the same way. They wanted children to believe they were robots. They didn't want the people to be out there doing talk shows and stuff.
Right.
So it's more that than like there was any shame involved or his agent had him not credited.
Yeah. And then Roddy McDowell, of course, the voice of Vincent. Vital information necessary centralized. I love it. There's such forced acronyms. I love it.
Whenever you come up with the name first and the acronym later, you're gonna show up with a pretty awkward acronym. Nevertheless, I don't know. I almost hate Vincent. Like I don't think there's been a character that's supposed to be lovable in a movie that I wanted to punch in the face more than Vincent. Almost everything out of his mouth is a quote from some other more famous person or some annoying, preachy, condescending thing. And it's like, man, I get what you were going for, but you just went too far. There needs to be some underlying personality in here. Vincent is perfect. He starts the movie by saving the day. He outduels the supposed to be scary robot who isn't scary at all. Ultimately, he's definitely a thing that's grafted over a different story, along with a bunch of cliches that the characters stay.
And that goes with, having so many different screenwriters working on that project. Some of them are coming in going, oh, hey man, I really love 2001. Let's do some of that. And then other one's like, Star Wars is awesome. Let's do some of that.
Slim Pickens, by comparison, at least feels like there's this kind of soul inhabiting the robots. I hated Vincent when I was a kid, and I didn't know why. And as I grew up, I'm like, oh, I know why. Because he's a dick.
Yeah.
All the time. That's all this guy is. His acts are heroic, admittedly. You would be out in the middle in a tiny tin can with this guy and like 4 other people. You'd go insane. He's such a jerk. Just like, shut up, dude.
Yeah. Shut down your voice processor.
Even Joseph Bottoms, when he's like trying to have a sense of humor about Vince, he's like, man, what were you put here to torture me or whatever? And he's like, no, to educate you. What a dickhead of a robot he is.
Surprised he didn't get ejected out the airlock.
Well, he can't even play along with the joke. It's like, come on, Vincent.
Whatever. This makes sense. I'm just glancing over here. I mean, the movie was originally, the idea was originally brought to Disney by the 2 guys who wrote Poseidon Adventure and Towering Inferno. So this was going to be a disaster movie in space, and
which it is.
It really is. Yeah, it ticks a lot of those boxes. And then it was going to be Space Station 1. Then it was changed to Space Probe 1. We almost had a movie with Probe in it.
I would have liked that very much.
That would have been good. And then it eventually came around and was like the Black Hole, with many. Yeah, there's many writers here that had their
behind every one of those writers, there's an army of Disney suits saying, "What if we did this? What if we did that?" And what they really meant was, put that in there, or we'll get another writer.
Yeah. Yep.
And the film is packed to the gills with that. That said, it just John Barry's musical score,
so good.
Yeah, his victory march is kind of lame, but that's not really his MO. His sense of sweeping drama and mystery is wonderful. The miniature of the Cygnus, the giant spaceship that they discover, is one of the greatest film miniatures of all time. It's not even a miniature. It would fill up my living room, but it's still obviously not a full-size spaceship. But it's a huge detailed miniature with all these individual lights and things on it. It really is magical. Little less so on the inside, but even on the inside, it's got a lot of neat ideas and things that are very, very cool.
Yeah.
Maximilian Schell, I just kind of took a turd on him, but he's hilarious in it. I mean, he's really fun.
Oh yeah,
he's ridiculous as he is. He's really, really fun in the film.
He's bonkers. He's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Way beyond James Mason in 20,000 Leagues. He's just off his rocker crazy, and you know it from the get go. He's more like Jack Nicholson in The Shining.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you know right away, well, this guy's up to no good. I mean, you know immediately, and then he only gets more bizarre and weirder as it goes on. The fact that they named the robot in the movie after the actor, or that they named the robot and then hired an actor with the same first name, whatever the coincidence that's going on there, is really, really weird. Because to hear Maximilian Schell call this thing Maximilian like a dozen or so times in the film is a really odd.
Yep.
It just adds to the crazy somehow. He even has this wonderful moment where I can't remember. I believe it's after Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins is great in it too. For a guy who's sort of out of favor in Hollywood, he recognized this sort of petty kiss ass like thing and just decided that's it. That's the guy, and went at it that way with this sort of single-mindedness. And everything that comes out of his mouth is, "And here's to your accomplishments, sir." You know, this is the only guy in the whole theater or the ship who doesn't realize this dude is crazy, and just kisses his ass the entire time. So he's the least likely person to be murdered by him. But the reason the robot Maximilian kills him is because that robot is a jealous, psychotic ex-girlfriend, basically.
Yeah.
And doesn't like the idea that this new sidekick has come along who is going to say, without fault, everything his boss wants to hear. So his first chance to murder him, he does, and then Maximilian pulls Yvette Mimieux aside. He goes, "Protect me from Maximilian." And you're just like, all right, all hope for some sort of reasonable ending is clearly lost here.
Nope, especially when the two of them merge together. Like, "I want to wear your skin." Like,
we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah,
that whole sequence. Not just that, but the whole last 10 minutes.
The last 10 minutes is a bonkers. It is absolutely out of, so the black hole,
people rip on it, but I actually think that the finale of the film is the best thing about the film, because it's the one moment where they're like, let's do it. Like, they just did it.
Well, they're like, there's no way that you can. I mean, I don't know how you tie it. Like you would.
You don't need to. You have a giant space station exploding in space. You've got your heroes getting sucked through a black hole. All you got to do to have a happy Disney ending is have the heroes just appear in space at the other side of it.
Come out
with like some beautiful Saturn-like planet, and it's like, well, we don't know where we are, but we made it. Instead, I believe they all die and go to heaven, judging on the long, like, shiny hallway they go through with angels flying in and out.
Yeah, the religious overtone of like, here's this angel that comes through, but here's Maximilian and his robot, and they merge and they go to what is clearly a depiction of Dante's
hell.
Inferno.
Yeah, clearly
right? This
hell.
is hell. Yep. And then here are heroes, like you said, and come out the other side.
Epic pull out, like foreground miniature shot with all these extras marching, and the actual shot of hell after we pulled out from them, standing alone on the mountaintop like Satan.
Yeah,
it takes your breath away. Like, it's a really amazing.
It's a
romantic
image,
art like depiction of the afterlife in the most negative, grueling, icky way. It blows my mind. Everybody, but let's not mistaken what those things mean. I mean, good people go to heaven, bad people go to hell. That's as simple as it gets. But they all bit the bullet. Everybody died. Vincent, everyone, they're all gone.
Well, yeah, because even
happy Disney movie kids. I mean, you talk about being dark. It's dark.
Yeah, and it's
when I was a kid, I knew it was dark. I felt it, but I didn't know what I was looking at. I really didn't understand what the movie, because I just hadn't seen enough movies to prepare me for that ending, for me to even interpret what that was as a 7-year-old or whatever I was. Yeah.
Yeah. 7. I mean, in a lot of the any of the merchandise or any like the storybooks that came out afterwards, all it does is just depict that the crew of the Palomino, that they made it, that they came out the other side of the black hole, boom, everything good.
Right.
Yeah, and that's
Disney for you, right?
Everybody, well, yeah, I mean, there's literally
an upside.
But the movie doesn't do that. The movie definitely implies they're dead.
Yeah, there was literally one of those little golden books. They did a little golden book of the black hole.
I had that.
Yep. A spaceship adventure for robots is what they called that. That was great.
For robots who used to be people and are now a zombified slave race to a madman.
But still having a human quality enough to bury their own dead at space.
Oh, that was weird.
We say all the time before we move on from black hole, well, what is it? What happened? You're talking about how Perkins' death is relatively bloodless, but what happened? What happened is what happened. And when you say it out loud, you should be a clever enough person to. Well, I talked about it a couple of weeks ago with Birds of Prey. What do they show? Okay, but what happened? What really happened in these scenes? If you ask yourself that and you say it out loud, you're like, Jesus, this is grisly. That's awful. Yeah, you need to be able to do that. I think as an effective movie watcher, you got to watch it and go, what was that? Not so much what did they show, or, oh, that's not so bad, or, oh, we didn't really know that guy. Just really stop with the hedging and go, what did I just watch? What was that meant to communicate to me? And try and take the full brunt of that. In a couple places in Black Hole, I don't think as a criticism, I think to its credit, it does get dark like they said it would, even though Gary Nelson's filmmaking itself is sort of always walking that line as keeping it a family film. Yep. But it's a PG film. I don't think it's PG-13 even.
The first from Disney. This was their what do you call it?
And a lot to recommend it. It's streaming online in all its widescreen glory.
You can watch it. Yeah, you can watch it in most streaming places, but it's available for free on Disney Plus.
Yep.
In typical Disney fashion, I mean, there are plans to do a remake or a remake of The Black Hole. It was put on hold once again because Disney executives said the script is too dark for a Disney film.
Not the last time we will hear that phrase when talking about this list of films.
That's true. That's true. All right, so let's move on.
This is one of the darkest, truly. When you really do ask yourself honestly, what did I just watch? It really is. Yeah, even though it's got constant wisecracking robots and it's got all this fun, like merchandising decisions at play heavily in it, it still is. It's something of whatever that first dark, madness at the edge of the universe film that they wrote survived to the end process. I think it's incredible that Disney left that ending in. I really do think it's amazing because it's not needed, yet it's amazing.
Yeah. Speaking of, what it can also drive you, it can also the edge of madness, bring you to the edge of madness, is an all-night scavenger hunt.
You bet.
And that brings us to our second film that we're going to be talking about. The fantastic 1980 classic hijinks film, Midnight Madness. Oh God, I love this film.
I do too. The both the scavenger hunt films that came out around this time are both really, really fun. And Midnight Madness is super fun. It's aimed, I think it's trying to be aimed at teenagers, and it's been a long time since I've seen Midnight Madness because the teenagers are the heroes of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But it also is a film that like is kind of trying to be both things at the same time, rather awkwardly throughout. Because it's not a teen movie of its era at all, which were all rather crass and, you know, whatever. And yet it does have lots of sort of questionable, zany hijinks related things in it.
It's all over the place. If you're not familiar with Midnight Madness, it is the fantastic story of some college kids with essentially a college graduate student summoning his, you know, some 5 other sort of prototypical, like, you know, your jock, your nerd,
the Breakfast Club, essentially.
The Breakfast Club of college students.
We're also all cheap stereotypes,
you
dumbasses.
To say, I'm going to, you know, he is the Leon, this grad student is the game master, and he has created the ultimate scavenger hunt. I can't even remember what they're playing for. What are they playing for?
What are the stakes? I don't remember either. Like, they must not be that important.
Well, it's bragging rights.
Is it really just bragging rights?
It's a contest.
It's bragging. It's for one of them as one of the captains to be able to say their team of people is better than the others.
It's based on a real life thing that was being done at the time in wherever, Southern California.
That actually tracks. That would make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not even seeing. Boy, I'm not seeing.
I don't think it's an accurate representation of what that thing was. I'm just saying that this was inspired by something that was actually happening in the culture at the time.
Yeah. Let's see. It was
video games were in their infancy. You know, you look at what you had to pass the time and what you had to stimulate your mind. Dungeons and Dragons was just appearing. Like this sort of idea of this all night event, or, you know, this puzzle, it fits in that era in a way that we still do things like this today, but it's a certain kind of person that gets into that kind of thing. So
the hilarious hijinks that
literally he tells them that they should take part in his game, and they all refuse until they start bickering. Those 5 leaders, you know, essentially challenge each other to do it. You know,
the competitive juices start to flow, and they find themselves buying into it.
Oh my God, it's so good.
He makes that reference, like at the beginning of the film, Leon's standing there and everybody walks out, right? They're all like, aha, whatever, your game is stupid, I'm not going to participate. And here's Candy and Sunshine, and they're looking at him like, Leon, your whole thing fell apart. He just sets it up like, I'm the ultimate mastermind. No, I've been doing this for a year. I've picked and studied all of my subjects. They'll be back in less than a week. And sure enough, they all start infighting for one reason or another. You know, like the sorority girls are trying to like expand their sorority, and here come the football players. Oh, we're gonna wreck everything.
The meat machine. The meat machine.
Yeah. And that, like, oh, I'll get you, I'll beat you, or whatever. And then invariably, every one of them lines up and picks a team and is there by Friday to start. No, I didn't watch this film again recently.
This isn't the easiest film to watch again. Actually, it's legacy by Disney. Pretty much all these movies have been blown off completely by the Walt Disney Company, but some of them, for, you know, like Black Hole, for various reasons, finds its way anyway. This is a film where that's harder to do. It's so of its time. It doesn't have anything salacious enough about it to make it a classic in that way, and yet it you know, it has its fans and people love it, but it's had a hard time. Initially on home video, it was a big deal, you know, in the early 80s, because that's how everyone saw it. I think you could search the world over and you won't find someone who saw this film in the theater. I really think that's going to be a tough thing to find. Everybody saw it on HBO or whatever, or in their local video store. That's where it's made its bones. So it was a big I mean, it didn't cost that much, but it was still a big flop for Disney. It didn't get them any of the teen audience that they were coveting.
It was a big time money loser for Disney. Yeah, I mean, it is available out there. You can stream it, rent it, so you can get it for $3-4. But it's not just available on Netflix or anything like that. If you have a subscription. But
if you were a big fan of it, there wasn't like some special edition DVD that ever came out for it. It's a movie that those sorts of things exist, but it's just not very celebrated.
It is the very first, since it is the first movie appearance by Michael J. Fox.
It's got that going.
Maybe at some point it will get some sort of.
Well, I don't think there's any version of it that doesn't just have him, like some picture, close up of him on the cover. That's all Disney knows to sell with it. So
even with the cameo of Paul Rubens in there, like as the arcade vendor.
It's full of fun stuff.
Yeah.
It's fairly clever. I like it. I admire it a lot, and I don't really laugh at it very much, but it's got this great energy that pulls you through to the end, and I think that's super fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an almost all once it gets going anyway, it's an almost all nighttime shoot, which gives it this, even though it's a really rather innocent film, it gives it this sort of vibe of danger, that Scavenger Hunt from a year before or so, which is basically the same movie, doesn't have at all. That film feels very undangerous.
Yep.
Even when you're kicking Tony Randall down the stairs, you're still like, he's going to be okay.
He's going to be fine. Oh, so good. Yeah. Midnight Madness. I'm not going to lie. I love it.
It's a good one.
All right. Next up is Watcher in the Woods.
This could be our Exorcist.
This is the one. Yeah, this is the one that Ryan said that. Yeah, the quote was, "This could be our Exorcist." Yeah. I mean, again. Yeah, I mean, this is. I gotta admit, this is a movie I do not know. I may have seen it. Some of it seems familiar to me. Like I feel like maybe I saw it, but I'm not sure. But yeah, it's and this is.
It's not much. I mean, ultimately, what the ghost is, what the Watcher is, turns out to be a fantastical idea. Maybe we'll spoil that at the end. We'll see if I can talk about it without spoiling it, but I'd probably just spoil it since that's really the story of the movie, unfortunately. But it's a story about this young American family who move into a haunted English mansion with a creepy Betty Davis living there, like. I don't know. It's just like, if you're going to move into a creepy mansion, I mean, it's just one of those things. And the lady there who owns it is all like cryptic and weird and is looking at you and giving you omens and warnings, just go live someplace else for the love of God. Nothing good is going to come from you doing that. It's just an utter cliche in that way. But it is the English countryside. The house is really cool. It's rather moody. The bits with the Watcher are kind of voyeuristic and weird. It stars what's her face from Ice Castles? I can't remember her name now. She's really the star of it. She's like fifth billed in it, but it's the plucky teenage daughter who is determined to figure out the mystery and get to the bottom of things, and who's sort of the most at risk in the story.
Mm-hmm.
The character's name was Jan, but the actress
is it Lynn Holly Johnson.
Lynn Holly Johnson, who a lot of people find to be one of the more annoying people ever. But I always liked Lynn Holly. I like her in this. I liked her in Ice Castles. I liked her. I'm the only one who liked her in For Your Eyes Only. You can go back and watch the Bond episode and get proof of that. She's cute, fun, plucky teenager, like right out of Central Casting. I'm not sure what's not to like. I get that she's a little annoying, but that's part of the gig. Anyone who ever had an older, annoying sister, who was kind of nice to you, but kind of horrible at the same time, like you sort of get it.
Yeah,
I'm not annoyed by her, so I find her sort of fun. The mystery is sort of interesting. All the creepy British character actors that she comes across that help tell the story, to help get her to the end. Like it's got some cool atmosphere in it. What it didn't have is a coherent payoff of any kind.
That's a combination of writing and Disney.
Like Disney just rejecting the ending to the point where they didn't have an ending really anymore. They had a blinding shaft of light and a lot of noise and one character trying in vain to explain while it was happening what was going on.
Yeah.
And it's part of because they had this huge elaborate ending planned, which would have kind of like the black hole, which I think would have knocked people's socks off if they'd ever filmed it. But they ran that with unfinished effects in front of test audiences. They actually released that. This is really unusual. You don't hear this. Yeah. They actually released that in New York and LA, like in a limited release, a premiere release with this unfinished ending. And the test audiences and the critics at the time hated it. So they pulled the whole film for almost a year while they reshot a different
10
ending.
days. It lasted 10 days. And then they yanked it off. And they were trying to rush the film out because in 1980, that was Bette Davis's 50th anniversary of being with that studio.
Yeah.
So it's like, here she is, 50 years of acting. It's going to be great. They put it out there. People were like, God, this sucks. So nope, not doing that.
Yeah. But they were convinced, I think wrongly, that they had a good movie other than an incomprehensible ending. And what they had was an okay, barely passable movie that if it had an ending that was memorable, you might have had something. And they took what was interesting and memorable about the solution to the issue. They kept it, what was happening, but the way they demonstrated it to you didn't help your understanding at all of what was actually going on. And a matter of fact, until I did research for this show and really read about the history of that, I couldn't have told you what happened at the ending of the movie. I really didn't know. I mean, I knew that so-and-so came back and this and that, but I didn't get what was happening. I didn't even get what the thing was that was making it all happen and why. And I think when you watch it today, you still kind of don't get it unless you go into it with a knowledge of what it is, and then you can be like, oh, okay, I see.
Because all of that was removed, right? When they went,
but it's all still there. The new ending, that all is still there. It's just a guy saying it and
versus them showing it, right? Which is
it's actually a little girl possessed by the Watcher telling you what happened while this light show is happening. And I really don't think that you get it. That they literally took an ending where they showed you to an ending where they told you, and it's still not entirely clear what's happening. If you want to know, write us. I'll explain it to you. Otherwise, there's a lot of writing about it on. There's even some still photographs of the Watcher in its physical form that will make you go, what?
Wow.
You can find those online. But Watcher in the Woods, it's another one of those where, it played on HBO. A bunch of people saw it. A bunch of people saw, it is a scary movie, ostensibly, that a family can watch together and come out relatively unscathed. So it's a kind of unique thing for its time. It has this mood and atmosphere in it. It just is. It does have Bette Davis in it. I don't know that they get a whole lot from her in the end, but she wanted to play her younger self in it. And she insisted that she play her younger self and they spent all this time doing makeup effects and stuff, trying to de-age her. Director felt he managed to de-age her a couple of decades, but he didn't manage to de-age her like 43 years or whatever it's supposed to be. Yeah. And he sort of showed her this screen test of it and was like, I don't know, Betty. I don't think we got there. What do you think?
Yeah.
And she's like, you're damn right we didn't get there. It looks ridiculous. I'm not doing it. Basically convinced her to uninsist on that particular thing.
Now this movie, this is the one that I had, in terms of where you can find it now. This is the one that was the most difficult. You can buy it to stream on Amazon Prime for only like $5, but literally that is the only place I remotely found it.
If you ever see this on Disney Plus, I'll be surprised.
Yeah. There was a 2017 remake of it with Angelica Houston, but no, this version, this Betty Davis version, that's the only place I was able to find it was to buy it for like $5 to
one of those
stream it on
digital streaming version things.
Yeah.
So so Watcher.
It might be worth $5 to you if what you've heard here is interesting. It's not a bad movie, but you know, blockbuster movies used to cost what, $3.99 or something. Look at it that way.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Next up on this is another one that I remember I loved growing up. I watched it a gajillion times. Dragon Slayer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Dragon Slayer is a co-production with Paramount.
Yep.
And you guys might have some different idea, but Dragon Slayer is the darkest movie on this list by like a country mile to me.
It's pretty. I mean, there's one coming up that I need to revisit it because I remember it being really dark and creepy. But I should maybe revisit it. But no, you're right. This one is.
But in terms of my measuring stick of what did you just watch happen?
Yeah.
This film it takes the cake. I just don't think there's any question. We talked about Dragon Slayer. It made our top 10 fantasy movies of the 80s list.
Mm-hmm.
It has what I still think is unsurpassed, the greatest screen dragon of all time.
Yeah.
I really don't think that's been beaten. And I think at the time of the film, you had to appreciate that when you were seeing it. It does have some weak things in it. Peter McNichol is crazy, sort of miscast in it. I think he does a nice job, but he, as an actor, like he can't even really bring himself to look at it or talk about it. He's embarrassed by it. And I don't think he thinks it's a crap movie. I think he just thinks, what was I doing in this movie? I mean, how did that even come to be, really? And it is weird when you're watching it. That said, the other person in it, I don't know if it's a spoiler to say who that is or what. I don't know.
I mean, when you watch it, if you can't figure it out from the beginning, exactly.
The audience knows that everyone else doesn't know.
All the villagers are dumb.
Yeah, they've been sacrificing virgins to this. Only female versions, of course. The males are always, you're good to go. It's great being a guy in this world, I'll just tell you.
Indeed.
To kind of keep the peace with this old, deteriorating, irritable dragon, through
Vermithrax pejorative,
through a rather brutal lottery system.
Yep.
And one dad of a young virgin girl has had the idea to disguise her as a boy. And it's that character who's trekked across the kingdom to find this great wizard, played brilliantly by the late Ralph Richardson in his penultimate role, I want to say. And he's great in it. He's only kind of in it in the bookends, but he's really, really great in it. Ian McDiarmid plays a crazy Christian monk in it. He's brilliant in it. It's full of these people that you sort of recognize from other stuff, but you know. Yeah. But it's dark, you know. One of the bad guys just shoots one of our heroes with an arrow because he just thinks it's funny. The actual sacrifice scene that you witness, I think, is one of the most brutal things in all of movies.
It's just that one is creepy,
disturbing.
It's hard. It's a hard watch because
pull no punches, disturbing sequence, which this movie requires because it really does need to show you without blinking what it is they're fighting for. You know, in that way, because it's not gratuitous. It's just, what are you watching? You're watching this poor person just fighting, kicking, scratching, crawling to take their next breath, and it's futile. And when you're trapped watching something like that, I don't know, it deeply affects me. There's this, you know, subplot about, which I won't go into the details of because there's some twists and turns involved in it that I think are useful. But there's this plot about how the lottery is rigged, you know, against the poor, and the payoff for that is absolutely brutal as well. So it's kind of like, it's just a dark, violent, gross movie. It's about a gross, medieval, brutal, ugly time. and the dragon is terrifying and really, really well realized on film. And I think Dragon Slayer is awesome, but it was PG too somehow at the time. And it's like Beastmaster, you know, it truly is the movie on this list where maybe your kids are tougher than me. I don't know, but this one feels like one I wouldn't sit down, even though I saw it when I was 10 and thought it was awesome. So I don't know.
Yeah, I get its PG rating at the time too, right? Because when you look at the other PG films around,
PG-13 didn't exist yet, which is why
didn't exist. And that's an important call out. It didn't exist, right? So you had G, PG, R. Right. And to get it to the R, like it just had to either be more gruesome, have more sex, or start cussing, and that was it. So
and those ratings are worthless because
they're
all that's
arbitrary.
happened is G is for animated movies, PG is for G-rated non-animated movies, and PG-13 is everything that used to be PG in the past. So that distinction, like for only a few years did it mean anything. Right now it literally means nothing. There's almost no such thing as a live action G-rated movie. And back in 1979 there were tons of them.
Yeah.
So, you know, those ratings sort of lost their meaning, but this is a PG movie. This is, like I said, I still think Beastmaster is worse because it has full frontal nudity and all kinds of really horrific things in it that this film is less explicit about. But in terms of what do you see happen, it's a tough one. But it's also beautiful. It's got Alex North, you know, who wrote the music to Spartacus. Like he's this old school 50s and 60s sort of film composer. It's got an amazing score by him. Some incredible cinematography, great design of the fantasy world in which it takes place.
And the dragon, we should mention Phil Tippett, who one of the great animators, stop action animators.
Yeah, he calls it Go Motion.
Go Motion, yeah.
Which is something that wasn't used very much, but it was essentially stop motion, except it was shot in a way that gave the figures motion blur like they would have if they were moving in a regular frame of a camera, which made it feel you still has that stop motion creepiness, but it does feel like it's inhabiting its surroundings in a way that the stuff in Clash of the Titans the next year doesn't really have. So even though those creatures are magical in an old school way too, it's splitting the difference in a really clever way. It's an amazing. Thermodrax he's an incredible screen monster, really an amazing one. It should be seen for that reason alone.
Totally worth a watch. And like for that film, there's not a lot of Disney injected into it. Just so if you're looking for a fantasy film where Disney's name's tacked on, Paramount's influence takes over this, which is why you get a more gruesome and darker version.
Yeah,
if Disney execs were injecting more into this, it would not have been the film.
Right. It's hard to imagine half of what happens in it would even could exist.
Right. Yep. And which is probably
but it was Disney. It was a Disney Pictures production. Even though it was a co-production.
And it is not available on Disney Plus, but it is available on the newly launched Paramount Plus. You can also rent it for on most streaming services, but you can, if you have a subscription to Paramount Plus.
It's CBS/Paramount.
Yeah, Plus. what until last week was CBS All Access. Now it is Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus.
Which Bryan and I have because that's the only way we can watch European soccer. All right. So next up, now this is a movie.
I have it for the CSI reruns.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes. And get it.
Which is what I would be watching now if I wasn't here with you two bozos.
Just downing, just putting CSI reruns straight into your veins. Yeah.
Get him in there, man. I don't even care which CSI it is.
I like CSI
Miami,
Sioux Falls,
CSI Bakersfield.
Boy, I wish I had that sound.
CSI Lubbock. They're all turnip related murders.
All right, next up is a the hilarious story of people trying to escape East Germany, and that is Night Crossing. When you think dramas featuring crossing East Germany, you think Disney.
Mm-hmm.
But this is
a really good movie based on a story about a family who escaped East Berlin into the West in a hot air balloon. And it's a true story, and it's really well done. There was a German remake of the same story just recently, which really straight up. The Disney version is sort of takes that idea and makes a movie out of it. There's a movie called it's whatever's German for balloon, but if you look it up, you look it up in English, it's called Balloon.
Balloonflucht.
Yeah, and
Balloonflucht.
Yeah. And it's really, really good too. It sort of tells the story straight up. But Night Crossing is a really cool film, actually. I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I haven't seen it since I watched it in a church basement on summer movie Tuesdays at some church in my neighborhood.
Wow.
Where we would go, and they would have a different Reader's Digest or Disney sort of, 19 millimeter film that they would show, and we'd all sit there on mats on the floor and watch it. And then our parents would be rid of us for a couple hours, which is the only reason for there to be that. We didn't, if you didn't, this in the early 80s, people had cable and stuff, but not everybody had it. That all was sort of slow to come into the culture. So this was a way for you to see stuff like this. And I saw a lot of movies that I still really love that way. And Night Crossing is one that I was excited about when I came across this list, because I hadn't really given it a lot of thought in all these years. But it's a family story. It's a family escape story. Everybody's everybody's English, and they talk with American accents. Like the idea of the Iron Curtain is sort of, they demonstrate it, but it's like an idea. It's not the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's not. The movie it reminds me most of is The Last Flight of Noah's Ark, which came out around the same time, which is this.
Wow, that's a title I have not heard of in a very long time.
Yeah,
it's a fun movie. It's about a family who gets marooned on an island, and they turn their B-12 bomber or whatever into a boat that they can take out to the shipping lanes and get rescued. It's fun. It takes the whole family to do it. You know what I mean? This is like a similar kind of story as that. But I don't have much to say about it because I haven't watched it recently, but it made an impression on me when I was a kid. That whole idea of sneaking silently over the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
Hot air balloon, and how they get it. The first time they order all the fabric and stuff for the hot air balloon, nobody questions it. But once they get busted and they're determined to try it again, the things they have to do to make this balloon without being able to just do it, it's really fun. And they have to be inventive and creative, and it's really atmospheric. It was shot in West Berlin. West Berlin at night there's no place like it. I mean, there's no such thing as it now. So back in the 80s, that was a real thing that inspired some great art. So I don't know where that one would be, but I encourage people to maybe check it out if they like I said, Last Flight of Noah's Ark. That's what we're talking about. It's a gimmicky, fun. It has that fun Disney family vibe to it. It is literally dark, but figuratively, I think a little less so.
I think this one is on streaming.
You can rent this one. This is like a $3 rental on most streaming platforms.
Good movie.
Yep. Okay, so the next movie is a movie that we've brought up before on the movie show with Joel and Ryan, but it is also from this very weird time period in Disney's history, and it was the movie that was going to redefine animation, and that's Tron.
Yeah,
Tron.
Love this film.
Yeah,
the great summer of 1982. Tron made a few bucks, but Tron was almost like every other great movie. There are a couple of movies that were hits. Conan, the Barbarian, and Star Trek II Wrath of Khan that came out summer '82. But if you were Blade Runner or The Thing or Tron or anything that came out after E.T. came out, you flopped at the box office. And that's a magical summer for us, because that you look at the films and it's just like all our favorite movies like in one summer, you know what I mean? And we remember them that way. But what we don't remember was that, man, once you took E.T. off your screen and put up Tron for a couple weeks, you were just like, all right, back to E.T. And all the theaters essentially did this. They ran stuff for a while until everyone who wanted to see him had seen it. And then they threw E.T. back up on the screen as quick as they could, because people were seeing that 3, 7, 9, 16 times. Yeah. And they were only seeing Tron once, so in a different summer, I think Tron is good enough and inventive enough. And I think it takes the world of computing and how computers work seriously enough that you watch a lot of movies about computers like Superman 3 or Electric Dreams or whatever. Pick your 80s computer fantasy movie. They all are just totally stupid. But a couple of them aren't. War Games isn't, and Tron isn't. It really takes the computing aspect of things. It uses it all as metaphor for an old-fashioned screen adventure, but it still takes that stuff seriously, and it's still inspired by real-life computing when it creates all these magical things.
It's good to call out here that it was actually guys who worked in programming and were programmers and people from MIT who had experience with computers that actually made this film.
Right. Like and their experience with their corporate overlords too, that they sort of wrote it in protest against. That's all in the movie. It's very cool.
I was amazed when I found out, because I started to look back through the history of this, the film. I'm trying to remember the director.
Steve Lischberger.
Lischberger. Thank you. Lischberger had mentioned Tron only once in an interview when he was doing, I think it was Animal Olympics or something is what his company was shooting. And he mentioned it kind of in passing, but didn't say anything else. Alan, the guy who becomes the character of Alan is actually
Bruce Boxleitner's character.
Bruce Boxleitner's character. He's based.
I can't remember his last name, but Alan 1 is his username.
Yes, Alan 1 is his username, and
Alan
K.
Alan
K is the godfather of like object-oriented programming and GUI interfaces and stuff. He read the interview, and he called up Lischner and he said, "Dude, I need to consult on your film. I need to help you out with this. I want to be in this. I want to be in this." And he was so in it from the beginning all the way to the end that's where the Alan characters, like Alan 1's influence comes from. He's basically Alan K. And Alan K's and
in great Bruce Boxleitner sidekick form. Bruce is the perfect guy to read all of the required exposition throughout the film. Even Tron himself is just a stick up his butt sort of character. He's the movie's named after him, but he's like, and then this will happen, and then we will do this, and blah blah blah. It's a really fun performance and a knowing performance by Bruce, who's one of my favorite actors in this sort of material.
And what I liked about this was that here are people that you wouldn't expect to be inside the movie industry. And this is, if you're listening, if you're sitting inside of a cubicle, if you're at home and you're a programmer or something else, here's your wake-up call. You can be creative. You can be an artistic person. All these things exist because go read the history of how Tron was made, and it's all by people like you.
Yeah. And it's incredibly amazing and inventive. It was shot on 70 millimeters so that they could layer on these 3 different layers of effects and have in the end about a 35 millimeter quality film, which was a very, very smart idea that only a room full of really smart technicians could have come up with, because it really would have been as it is. Some parts of it are blurry and degraded and full of blown up and frozen film grain and stuff. That's just the nature of opticals at the time. But mostly today, if you watch a properly restored version of it, you're seeing this fantasy world where it's shot on live cameras, but then animated over in a way where the computer animation and the drawn animation and it all fits together in this sort of miraculous and I should say strikingly beautiful way. Lisberger joked that when they got the cameras to shoot the live action footage, because they're all as big as a Jeep, he said that there was still sand in some of them from making Lawrence of Arabia. Which is a joke, but it's a pretty funny joke that I thought we'd repeat here.
Joke, yeah.
You know, they just didn't make movies like that then, and nobody ever made a movie like Tron. Even the Tron sequel, they didn't have to do all that.
No,
the same way again. The animators and the army of old school Disney magic makers. This is the film where the new and the old, much more I think than Black Hole or some other things. This is the film where that all came together to make a really unique and interesting and fascinating thing. That just the timing was just terrible for them.
They proved out CGI as a concept to be placed in live action film, and that you could do it. And the thing is,
that it didn't have to be either or. It didn't have to be something someone was watching on a screen. It could be part of the movie itself.
And the entire CGI sequences of the film add up to something like 15, 16 minutes of running time. And so it's not the bulk of the film. Right. But they spent so much time working on it, so much time and so much money. Disney just threw money at this thing like nobody's business. To come up with.
They thought they had a massive hit. They really thought they had something unique and special, which, like I say, I think they did. It's a little simple the way it's scripted, but the ideas behind it continue, and the themes behind it continue to carry weight as we go forward. I think
it changed filmmaking.
Yeah, it is. Well, and it's proven to have had this huge lasting effect on film and culture. The light bikes are still, a huge thing, to the extent that now in 2021, I don't know if it's going to be this year or next year, that Disney World is going to have a Tron roller coaster. They've had it in China, I believe, for several years, like a good 10 years or so now. Maybe not quite 10, but
next year will be the 40th anniversary of the movie. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, it has this staying power because, maybe even because of the, what you were saying, Ryan, of the sort of the simplicity of the story itself.
Right. That's just a linear, do this story. It's the magic of being transported to another world. The idea behind the movie is that a real life guy is de-resoluted and uploaded into the computers, that he needs to find some evidence to exonerate himself and get the rights to some of his intellectual property back. So it's a heist movie for him. And that's Jeff Bridges, who, again, it's fun watching young Jeff Bridges play this type of wisecracky guy. I can't remember the woman's name, but both Box Leitner and her are great foils for that because they play these actual computer programs really straight. When I watch Tron, the only objection I have to it, and I don't know how this is fixable, but we should not enter the universe of Tron until Flynn does. And there's all these scenes with I can't remember the other actor's name, the guy who plays Ram. And the guy who plays Crom, and you meet these people and they're in this world and they're cool, but why are we spending time, because they're not even playing games or doing anything spectacular. Why are we spending time with them in the crazy computer world before our own character, our own surrogate character is transported there? I've always thought that felt like some dumb idiot at the back of the room saying, we need to establish time. So, because it just from every other storytelling aspect, it's stupid. It robs you of the big wow moment. Tron Legacy fixes that. We don't go there until he goes there, and then then it's this wow moment. It is in both cases, but it's a double wow moment when you go there with the character that you're supposed to be identifying with. I've always thought that was dumb and frustrating. At the same time, I don't know where those other scenes would have gone. I like getting to know Ram and Crom. They're cool, but I don't. Yep. It's weird.
Yeah, it would have to be a long setup sequence before you get, Flynn interacting.
Flynn involved, and I just there's no storytelling reason for that, except some dumbass was just too impatient to wait for it to happen. Naturally.
Yeah, I wonder if there was an element of, well, if we wait and if we don't see it until Flynn goes into the programming, will people think that it's not real? Like this is in Flynn's head or something.
Let them think that. Who cares?
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm just wondering if that. I'm just trying to think out. I'm thinking out loud as to why a decision like that would be made. No, we need
structurally, it's odd because it's not the first time you go into the computer world should, even if you're not going to wait or you can't wait, it should happen in like some pre-title sequence and it should blow your mind.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be just these two guys in these little cells chit-chatting about what they used to do before they were slaves. It's an actuary program. It's an odd scene.
And Cindy Morgan, let's give it up. Yeah, we want to mention Cindy Morgan. Of course,
she's great in it.
Best known as Lacey Underall.
She's great in it, and
Caddyshack,
and Bernard Hughes and David Warner. David Warner is fantastic. He's the bad guy.
All right, Tron is available on Disney Plus. Also,
Tron's everywhere. Tron's legacy really has done well for Disney, even though the box office take at the time wasn't bad, but it was way more moderate than they had hoped.
Yep. All right. Next up is Something Wicked. This Way Comes.
Ray Bradbury.
Ray Bradbury. Little creepy fantasy horror, dark yet family film.
Disney family horror. That's it's like an oxymoron.
Jack Clayton, who directed a rather famous. Well, he directed a bunch of stuff. He directed the Great Gatsby in the 70s and a whole bunch of things. He's a British guy. He directs this with a nice formalism that really serves the film well. I wouldn't think that an uptight British guy directing a homey Americana Bradbury story would be a good mix, but on film it really works great because the design and the atmosphere is all pure British horror story, and yet the dialogue and the kids and the characters all kind of live in this alternate kind of Norman Rockwell painting, and the two things are married right down to the very British but very very intimidating bad guy, Jonathan Pryce with his platform shoes on, being as deliciously evil as he could possibly be.
Are we sure he's a villain? Because his name is Mr. Dark, and I think that sort of
it's a little on the nuts.
Yeah.
Dark Circus. Have you seen these two boys?
Yeah.
He just oozes creepy. Don't trust this guy. He's going after your soul. Why not? Right from the start. It's that kind of story. We're talking about Bradbury now. It's not. He's not hiding anything from you. Right. This dark circus comes to town. The slow motion smoke coming out of the top front of the train. It's awesome, and the kids chasing the train, and then there's this sequence that happens where the circus comes to town, and they see the animals like on the side panels of the train. They get all excited, they chase it, and then apparently there's this huge effect sequence where basically the entire circus, an animated circus carnival, comes out of a hat basically and forms itself and everything. They cut it because they thought it would be mocked. It was expensive and it looked cool, but it didn't look real, and they thought it would be mocked. And I have to say, I'd love to see that sequence if it truly is finished. But them just chasing the train and then going around a corner and showing up around the corner with the whole carnival empty and fully formed in front of their eyes is as creepy a thing. It's as simple and as scary and creepy a thing as you could have. What's creepier than an empty carnival at night just appearing out of the fog?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need to see it animatedly all, coming to life. Like, you don't need that. You don't need the weird sequence where they're all 2 years older and getting attacked by spiders either. That was added at the last
but that was like okay, we were doing reshoots, so we're gonna put this stuff in, and like we
these
can't de-age the
prepubescent kids.
Yeah.
Who suddenly have like 12 o'clock shadow, and like, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but they're just obviously not the same age they are in the rest of the movie in that sequence.
It's a little jarring.
The great Jason Robards, playing this guy who classic Bradbury-esque character, this sort of weak bookworm of a guy who has this chance to do the right thing, to be brave and to be a hero to his son. It's really, really powerful. That scene in the library where Price is tearing out the pages of his life in mockery of him and in condemnation of him is like really, really fantastic. The townsfolk are really lovable, if sort of hopelessly doomed, and the sidekicks, of the circus are all creepy, and it just
the right amount of creepiness too, right?
And and yet it's totally a family film. Yeah. I really don't think there's anything that's too much for a kid, or that it's scary, but it's not chill your bones scary. It's moody and atmospheric, and it really does play safe with you. You really do, even though the film doesn't hint at it, it's something about it. It's the Bradbury of it. And not all Bradbury movies have happy endings by any means, but this film just feels like the good will overcome here in whatever way it can. It will. You sort of believe in that from the beginning. A lot of that's the kids. A lot of it's Robards' gravitas. Despite the fact that he's playing kind of a wimp, he brings a real powerful screen presence with him that's equal to Price's, and they're fantastic together. Some really cool effects. I don't know. I really like Something Wicked This Way Comes. I think it holds up really, really well.
I haven't seen it in a very, very long time. I remember liking it. I remember thinking this is dark and cool, and it made me feel grown up watching it.
Yeah.
So
saw it on video when I was a kid. Thought it was fantastic. Haven't seen it since. Wanted to see it before the show.
Well, you can't. This is one you can't find anywhere to watch this. There's a few places where you can buy a DVD of it, but it is not available on any streaming platform. It's
weird to me, because to me, this came out in '83. I mean, to me, it's indelibly a part of that era where they basically remaking every single film from that time, and this to me, this is as good as any of those. Really. It's a good film.
I wonder. I'm reading
certainly
here,
as good as Krull or whatever.
I am reading here that there is talk of doing a remake of Something Wicked This Way Comes for Disney Plus. So maybe it's one of those things that what's
it need a remake for? It takes place in the 40s.
I don't know.
Probably to update it for modern times and take out
get a love triangle in there of some kind.
Sure,
definitely.
When you have a beloved like the story that people of all ages absolutely respond to, when you're going to go revisit that property and that people hold beloved and worship, one of the smartest things as a production company you can do is make it super dark and weird and creepy, like what they did with Return to Oz.
Well, you're not revisiting, you're returning.
Yeah, that's true. You're returning. So Return to Oz is our next film.
Yeah, Walter Murch, who's not a humanistic director of any sort. He's a really talented guy.
This is the only time he ever directed.
Yeah, he was a really brilliant sound designer and just a really brilliant film
editor,
thinker, and technician editor. Yes.
Has worked on a ton of really, amazing films.
Academy Award winner too.
It's a pretty accurate, for Apocalypse Now and other things. And it's really accurate version of Ronald Dahl's story, but
not Ronald Dahl. L. Frank Baum.
Well, L. Frank Baum. Geez, I'm sorry. It's not Ronald Dahl at all.
Yeah.
or it'd be even creepier.
It would, yeah.
It
the
does
creepiness, creepy. I mean, it's way
okay. There's creepiness, and then there's Ronald Dahl creepiness. Yeah, this doesn't go that far.
But this movie is closer to Roald Dahl than it is to the movie of
the Judy Garland
Judy Garland film.
Yeah, there's no songs in it. It is creepy. It's the whole thing isn't a dream that happens during a tornado. It's a fever dream that happens while this little girl's being tortured because nobody believes her stories about Oz. So they're literally
trying to correct her.
They're hooking her up to diodes and sending electrical shocks through her with her parents looming over her.
Oh my God.
And that is what sends her back to Oz in this. So that says it all, really. The film is creepy. It's weird. It's weirder than it is creepy. Its creepiness is, there's a lot more of it than you'd think there'd be in this kind of movie, but it's not that creepy. But it is constantly odd. The characters that you're confronted with are all stand-ins for the characters in the earlier film, but they are all super weird in a way that a talking scarecrow somehow isn't that weird once you spend a little bit of time with it. The talking Pumpkinhead kid is weird the whole time, and the moose head, and it's just weird. It really is super weird, and if you can get over that,
the Gump.
If you can get over that, it's pretty inventive and interesting looking film. You know, it's an interesting fantasy film from that era, but it's a lot more like a fairy tale, like almost like legend than it is like The Wizard of Oz from 1939.
Yeah, this is a film that
people rejected it for that reason.
Oh yeah,
this is not a sequel to Wizard of Oz. This isn't at all what we wanted. You know,
and it wasn't supposed to be. At least that's not how Murch saw it, and that's not how the original two books that he based it off of were. They weren't sequels to the Wizard of Oz, and he brought this thing to life. Thing is the best way to put it. His vision, his passion project, right? He put it together.
Labyrinth. It's a little like because it's this little girl going through this magical land with all this crazy weird stuff, but it doesn't have any of the fun of Labyrinth either, I have to say. Like the film never lets you off the hook from the weirdness. It just takes it all not seriously, but it takes it all literally, and that is weird. It's a weird approach. Even though I enjoy it as an older person, I enjoy it as a curiosity more than a movie itself.
Yeah,
it's a dark from the beginning all the way to the end. And my friend Matt put it best when I told him these are the list of films I got to go through. He went, "Oof, that's a little hard to get through." And I was like, okay, yeah, all right, embracing myself again. Because I remember as a kid watching it.
To me, it's purely expectations. I think if it hadn't been an Oz film, if it had been a weird 80s fantasy film, with a little girl going on a magical journey, even if you changed hardly any of it.
But
I just don't think the reaction would be so vitriolic as it is to it. Because I think
the fact that you say, when you say Return to Oz, you're like, I'm going back. Woo, we're going over the rainbow. Woohoo. Yeah, it's going to be, and they're like, woohoo.
If we only had brains. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has none of that. It has none of that. She shows up in Oz and everybody's been enslaved and
turned to stone.
The Yellow Brick Road is all torn to shreds, and it's this dark, ugly, threatening place. And Oz was threatening enough, but it had all this joyous buoyancy to it. And this film has none of that.
It's like they said, hey, kids, now that the kids who loved Wizard of Oz so much growing up, now that you're all adults, I'm going to crap on your child. We're just going to destroy your childhood memories and show you what you were really watching. Or, I don't know. There's something to it feels
there's a contrary aspect to it.
That's a great word. That's a great way to put it.
That's your idea, but I totally get it. I don't think that's intended, but that absolutely exists as part of the project. It's the defining aspect actually of the project. So
that's why I'd say, like, don't if you're going to watch this film, do not, please do not look at this as a sequel. Go in to watch this film.
Keep your expectations in check for just how truly different it is.
Yeah, this is not a binge. Hey, I'm gonna watch. This is not the Wizard of Oz cinematic universe.
Right? They did that to pretty great effect in Oz the Great and Powerful, the Sam Raimi film. That's a really good prequel to the world of Wizard of Oz, in my opinion. That's about as good as a modern filmmaker is going to be able to do with that type of material. So go watch that. That's fun. This is very, it's interesting, but it's not very fun at all.
Anti-Oz.
I will mention, just because any chance we get to say this,
but it's really beautiful. It's really well designed. It's really the puppetry and stuff. Like, it's very inventive. There's all this really cool fantasy world aspect to it. Matter of fact, there's this really weird thing that's not explained about how the main bad guy, the King of Oz at the time, really, really hates or is threatened by chickens. And of course, for whatever reason, Dorothy goes back to Oz with this chicken, this talking chicken that helps her and gives her advice and stuff. And there's this great scene, and forgive my impression, and double forgiveness to you in Radio Land who can't even see this, but there's this weird entity that lives inside the rocks of the world, and it basically follows our heroes and then informs on them to the bad guy. And the rock's just an animated face in different rocks, and it's like, and it's really funny. It's fun animation. And it first says, "Oh, somebody has come," blah blah blah, and then and then he's like, "Okay, you may leave," and it doesn't leave. It sits there and goes, and he's like, "What else? What is it?" And he goes, she has a chicken with her sire," and from off screen, you can see the back. You hear him say, "A chicken," and the animation's like, it's so awesome. And I'm like, oh, I wish there was more of this in it. I really do. Maybe the chicken thing is explained, but I don't think that it is, because I don't think the book explains it. And I think a book can do that. I think a movie, I hate to say this because I didn't need an explanation. I thought just that moment, if that had been it, would have been worth it. But people, they want everything explained to them. And this movie doesn't work very hard at that. People disappear in it into some weird void, which is kind of Oz's version of PG-13 death. And then they reappear from it. And there's no really reason given as to why or what. Sure. It's all these weird ideas that they execute, but don't bother to throw the audience a bone every once in a while. So
the Sci-Fi Saturn Awards, this movie was up for Best Fantasy Film, but of course lost to the greatest fantasy film of the sci-fi film of the fantasy film of the 80s, Lady Hawk. So any chance to mention Lady Hawk?
Hey, Return to Oz is it's not a gem in the rust or anything, and it's not a forgotten gem, but it is a misunderstood and unfairly maligned film. It is no Lady Hawk though.
It is available on Disney Plus, so you can watch it if you have a Disney Plus subscription.
Firuza Balak plays Dorothy Gale in it.
All right, so next,
her family is all just super mean, and Nicole Williamson plays the psychologist and the evil King of Oz, in the double casting. That the child psychologist they bring him to, and Nicole Williamson's always a treat when he shows up. Notoriously hard to work with, but he's worth it because what he puts on screen is so fun. And his evil child psychologist, it was incompetent and worthless, is fantastic. So you get that, and you get that rock guy who I really learned to love by the end. Even though he was kind of a bad guy, I learned to love him by the end.
One of the things that
even in the regular Wizard of Oz, where like Dorothy wakes up and she's in bed all warm and cozy and surrounded by loved ones smiling at her, they find her dying of hypothermia in a river. The search party with dogs find her at the end.
Yeah.
It's like, geez, you guys, what are you doing? It's like, it's all part of her imagination. Even the fact that she has a loving family with loving farmhands, she's just dreaming that up. We can all see with our own eyes that she's just living in this nightmare world where she has to escape to a made up nightmare world just to cope psychologically. It's again, when you say what it is, it sounds almost brilliant, I have to say.
Yeah.
But your reaction may vary. Be warned on that one.
So the next film is a film that I remember not liking. So I'll be curious to see what you guys say about this. Baby, Secret of the Lost Legend. Yeah, you know, you go to Central Africa and discover a brontosaurus. Yeah.
A brontosaurus couple and their baby.
And their baby.
Titular character of Baby, Secret of the Lost Legend.
So as a film goer, like, you know, around the time this film came out, my viewpoint of what you should be seeing on cinema as a kid definitely had changed. I thought this concept was stupid.
Yeah.
I thought it was stupid in 1985. I think it's stupid now. And so
it's cool. It's a Lost World story. You've got a couple of William Cott and Sean Young play a couple of like Peace Corps people trying to, you know, this is a little insensitive now, but trying to bring, you know, like some sort of civilization to the uncivilized Africans. And you've got this evil British, I don't know what his deal is, scientist or something. And they're all chasing this secret of the lost legend, this legend that this giant creature lives in the jungle. To me, it's like a family version of King Kong. It is stupid, but it's harmless enough. Like this movie has a lot of condescension and hate that goes with it, which I don't think it earns at face value. Plus, there weren't a lot of ways to see live action dinosaurs at the time, and the dinosaurs in the movie are designed. They're not the best, but they interact with their environment in a very believable and real way. The puppet especially of the infant that they sort of adopt and try and raise when bad things happen to mom and dad. It's pretty well done. It is weird that the two main characters who become sort of the conservationists of the film are like he's always horny and trying to get her to sleep with him. And you get the idea that they sleep together a lot, but we don't show it. All we're privy to is his advances, which makes him for an odd character. Sean Young looks great in it. And I liked it. It's all shot on location in like the Ivory Coast, and you know it has this exotic flavor to it. All these helicopter shots and all these widescreen views of the actual jungle and the rivers, and how they kidnap these dinosaurs and try to get them out of the jungle is tricky. I think all that's done in a very photoreal and believable way. I think when the brontosaurus goes on its rampage at the end, it's fairly effective. So I get what you're saying. It is dumb. It's a dumb Lost World movie. Those are all stupid. Truly, like that's the whole. They all are. I can't think of any ones that were like, oh yeah, that one was the smart one. You know, it wasn't until Jurassic Park came along and the whole first third of the thing was them explaining DNA to you and everything.
Yeah,
the movie's not quite like that, but the book just goes out of its way to say this is how it's possible, and then it delivers you an adventure. This movie just doesn't bother with that first part because why bother? You know, is kind of my take on it. It is childish and stupid though. It's great role for Julian Fellows, the creator and writer of who used to just be put upon actor.
Now he's
he plays the Toady, the henchman, the main henchman of our bad guy, played by, is it Patrick McGowan plays the bad guy?
Patrick McGowan, yep.
You know, Patrick McGowan, he will never turn down a check to be in a stupid movie, but he plays it straight. I appreciate that when I go back and watch it. William Cott doesn't play it straight, but he's not asked to. He's supposed to be this wisecracking guy or whatever. He's asked to you know, be Han Solo and Luke Skywalker clothing, essentially.
Yep.
He was first runner-up to be Luke Skywalker, in fact.
Yes, he was. Baby Secret of the Lost Legend is available. You can watch it, stream it on rent to stream it, or rent or buy it to stream it on most services. If you are a subscriber of Hoopla, and I gotta admit, I'd never heard of the streaming service.
But Hoopla's got Baby Secret of the Lost Legend included. Well, there's a reason to check it out, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, they got that thing on lock.
I sort of stole your thunder, Brian. Did you want to rip on that one some more?
There's nothing to rip on. I mean, I freely admit that I didn't watch the film, and that even now I didn't watch the film because I thought the concept was. Yeah, I looked at the stills.
You're not alone. Not many people have watched it. They didn't even watch it at the time.
And I tried, like, when I go back and say, okay, maybe I should watch this film, right? I'll pull up the trailers again. I'll take a look at the stills. I'll, say, okay, can I get into this? And I was just like, oh God, this is like a live action Land Before Time. I don't need this shit. Like, that's what came to me. And I was just like, all right, when we get to this segment of the film, I'm just going to shut the up.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to the movie that I also one could make the argument that this is also, this is a pretty dark film. But yet it's animated darkness, The Black Cauldron.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I just sort of wanted to cap it off with this. This is a kind of beloved animated movie that also cost a ton and came out and totally flopped because tonally it's very serious and it is spooky and dark.
Except in France. It made money in France.
Did it?
Yeah, it did.
That's good for it, I guess. I like Black Cauldron. I don't love by this point in animated films but it's amazing to me that Black Cauldron's only about 2 or 3 years difference. The next Disney animated movie was Little Mermaid.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're 20 years apart at least.
And that has to go back to
their style.
Their style. When the film was put together and they decided to go.
Black Cauldron to me is Disney's culmination in let's be darker, let's be more serious, let's do something different. And it's the aftermath of that is let's not do this.
Yeah. And
we'll talk about what their solution was in a second, but
the animators wanted to do the direction was let's make something that's like Snow White, right? That type of animation. And you can tell, Oliver had it, like my son Oliver, he was walking through the room and I said, hey, you want to sit down? Start it from the beginning. And I played the film and he goes, oh, this is old timey. No, I'm out of here. As it was. And when I thought about it, I was like, why did he say that? Oh, it's because the style of the art is literally like Snow White, not anything more modern.
Right. And it is old timey. It's
and it's
35 years old.
It is. I refuse to say that's not old timey. Get out of here.
I'm just saying.
No, you guys are right though when you say that this was the this was the pinnacle of, this was the culmination, I should say, of all of that effort of trying to appeal to an older child or adults, try to be darker, a little bit edgier, that Miller was trying to do. That he didn't even get to see it out. He was replaced by Katzenberg and who's the other guy? Eisner, yeah. And and the famous story goes is they're like, okay, well, what do you got in production right now? And so Katzenberg sat down in the screening room and watched what they Black Cauldron in its almost completed form, and he was so enraged and went, what in the bleep is this, that Katzenberg stormed into the editing bay and wanted to re-edit the whole thing himself.
Yeah, but it's not like there's 8 million alternate takes. They built the film from scratch. You can't re-edit an animated movie.
I mean, they did end up cutting like 7 minutes though from that Katzenberg was like, we can't show kids this.
Yeah, and those bits still show up kind of in the film if you're watching it. There's kind of just a blip of oh, here comes the army, the Cauldron born, and they're attacking like these guys, and then it's good awkward cut to nope, nothing happened. We're just moving on.
We're moving on. So
be nice to get an unedited version of Black Cauldron, but Disney, even to this day, they're ashamed of it, which is too bad because it's beautifully animated film. But
I wanted to say if you're looking for a film that is like, hey, I heard about the Chronicles of Prydain, right? Lloyd Alexander's series from the 60s, and I want to see this film, right? Because it's based on the first 2 books. This film is not those books. Let me just say that. And Lloyd Alexander would tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
Go read the books but watch this film. It is an enjoyable story by itself. It is not those books. So don't
even in its compromised version, it's fairly
even in
effective.
its compromised version. Yep.
Yeah.
What Katzenberg and Eisner did, they stopped this with something that was going to say Disney on it. It was going to feel like Disney, old school Disney. How they had their cake and ate it too was they launched several sub studios right around the same time. Touchstone Pictures, obviously, then Hollywood Pictures, then Caravan Pictures, and these films throughout the late 80s and 90s and even early 2000s, you could, if you were a Hollywood picture, you could literally have monsters eating people's heads, and you could have violence and boobs and the works. Didn't matter. Touchstone Pictures, came out of the gate with a bunch of hits. Ruthless People was one of them. I can't remember all of them, but the late 80s they had.
I mean, wasn't Splash one of the first? Wasn't that
yes.
one of the first?
So there's some crossover here actually with these and those, but that's how it always is when an era comes to an end. But that worked. Now we can have it. You want to make adult movies you want to be a studio like the other studios. You're a Touchstone Picture. We'll just get the best people to come in and make them, and we'll treat them like they're treated everywhere. Katzenberg and Eisner were, Eisner ran Paramount for a while. Yeah. They were experienced in the rest of the culture, and they were able to lure in outside talent so that Disney wasn't just a boutique studio anymore. And that fixed the problem to a sense that is Splash even vaguely a Disney movie, is Dead Poets Society. It isn't really. This is a whole different deal. But that was their solution, and it worked, because then when the Disney animated films started up again, they were suddenly a little bit with Little Mermaid, but massively with Beauty and the Beast, which was nominated for Best Picture. And then that became a cottage industry that it still more or less is today. So they were able to have it.
Yeah, and there's benefits that came out of this film, like that for the industry of animation. This is the first time in the first.
You
film.
Still talking about Black Cauldron? Because
no, not. Well, yeah, we are. Like we are talking about Black Cauldron, but
you're still talking about.
I'm still talking.
I've moved on from that. I'm in the '90s now. Come along.
This is
with
the first time.
Running out of time.
There. We got to go back to history here, right? This is the first time CGI was actually
more Black
used in
Cauldron
animated
from Bryan. The Black Cauldron, the deleted scenes.
It's the first time CGI was used in a film, like animated film, for Disney, and that set the tone for all those films in the '90s.
Yeah,
where I don't disagree with you. It's an innovative film. It's really great. It's vastly misunderstood. It's a shame that the studio, even this many years later, with nobody around who worked on it or who greenlit it or who even greenlit the stuff after it, that they still sort of treat it like a bastard stepchild. It should be put in the historical context that it's in. I completely agree with you on that.
Yep.
It's a cool movie.
Black Cauldron is available on Disney Plus to watch.
That's something.
Yep. So that is something. It's not.
That's something. That's not nothing.
They're not recognition away. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. But like I said, they abandoned this. This era really was this awkward era where they really tried to invest big in films, and it just repeatedly didn't work out for them. Even though there's at least a couple of classics on this list. Mm-hmm. And today it's even funnier because now it's the opposite. They're out there, but try and find a Touchstone movie now. You can't. Those other studios are gone. They bought, Marvel, and they bought Pixar, and they bought Lucasfilm, and now those are the sub studios, and those really are the whole ball game for them. So it's funny how the wheel turns around, if you will.
Indeed. Indeed. All right. So that, so there are several other films that, we mentioned, a couple of them from that era of the 70s and into the 80s, where Disney was figuring things out. They were working on some stuff. They had they had some inner turmoil. It was their teen angsty, it was their angsty years. It was their emo period. And so
coming of age Disney.
Yeah, coming of age. Before they got their corporate sellout job and decided to just we're gonna buy the world.
Yep.
But there are some great films that you can check out, and I hope you, and of course,
I think we managed to advocate to some degree for all of them.
Yeah, all of these films. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing here that we're saying, you know what, avoid this film. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying that Disney went through this period where, it's not like it's not like today where, like Ryan said, they have Star Wars and Marvel and Pixar, and they have these massive franchises and studio. It's a whole different beast now. I mean, it's a beast. There was a time when Disney was trying to figure things out, and they had a guy in charge who, should he have been in charge? I don't know, but he wanted to try something different. He said Disney should be more than what it is. And he was right. I think he was even proven right. Yeah, ultimately, I think he was right. Now,
just his way of going about it was still insular and a little bit at odds with itself. And I think once they brought in these outside executives in to save the company, and they essentially did. They did it by. There still were some uniquely Disney things, but they mostly did it by ignoring anything Disney had anything to do with, by slapping a different logo on the beginning of the movie. And that's how they saved it, essentially. And those moderate hits and those cheaper exploitation movies and stuff made them enough money that they could make these big animated movies. Yep. And the animated movies had to be relatively strictly Disneyfied stories. Yep. And that worked for them.
And if you were going to do live action under the Disney name, it needed to be Herbie the Love Bug or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got a little time. Yeah, we got a little time here yet. Just very briefly, let's quick. When I woke up this morning, an old friend was kind of clattering away. So I want to get your thoughts on some Tickertainment trend tracker.
Bye! Bye! Sell! Bye! Sell! Bye!
You didn't stomp on it.
First time. I'm watching it. I'm watching because I'm like, I know it's not.
It's
done.
easier to not do when you're watching it. I can attest to that.
All right. So the first one here, as a trend, we've known about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC extended universe, and Star Wars has had it. Now, we're seeing a larger trend there, with these cinematic universes. There's a Lord of the Rings cinematic universe. There's, all these things. How are we feeling about the sort of long-term Hollywood trend of cinematic universes?
I'm okay with it because when they deserve to fail, they do.
Okay, so we can go ahead and do a
bye
on that.
Well, I'm just saying it's a little late to give a shit about this. If you're against this, then you might as well just find a rock to crawl under and just stay there for the next 30 years, because this is it. This is big corporate movie making. And I mean, this is what the aim is, to launch franchises that go on and indefinitely, and all the good and ill that come with that. But I'm cynical about that. But at the same time, you can't just sit here and say, well, it's all garbage or whatever, because it isn't. It's turned out some good films. The Lord of the Rings, the Middle Earth, we'll call it, instead of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, the Middle Earth cinematic universe, yeah.
A lot of that seems impossible to adapt into cinema, to be honest. Yeah. There's not much in the Silmarillion that you can just make into a movie easily. As an example, there were these godlike creatures who essentially sang the world into being, and they only abandoned the world, not so much because it disappointed them, but that they lost interest in the song. Trying to show that cinematically is impossible, really. So how they do it, it's all about how you do it. But you look at something stupid like I, Frankenstein and Tom Cruise's Mummy remake, and that was supposed to be something called the Monsterverse or something like that.
Yeah, the Universal Monsterverse or something. Yeah,
those are terrible. And by rights, that cinematic universe is nowhere. Which is exactly where it should be. Something that's slightly better is the Godzilla Kong movies, only slightly, but it is better. Yeah. Those are only doing so well because they're only so good, and it's kind of to me the
buy or sell. It's more of a market, a bear market.
I just accept it for what it is, and if you do it well, it can be done well. I mean, I lament giant corporate media films. I do, but I that's what we have. So I'm not going to stop watching movies because of that. I hope that they're good, and I maintain that hope. Brian, do you feel differently about that, or
no? I'm a cautious buy on this one because they're like, if it's an established IP, it comes with a lot of material that you can work with, especially if it's there's a single writer, maybe there's a couple of writers you really love. But look at who's directing it. Look at who's screenwriting it. Pay attention to what someone else's vision of that IP is going to be, because as we've seen in the last 2 years, 3 years, you can take a beloved IP and crap all over it really fast.
Sure. So, well, you can also take what would be great in comic book pages, try and make a movie out of it that doesn't have any cinematic value, and you end up with something that's stupid and really, really difficult to buy into. There's what's in a comic, there's what's in like a motion comic and an animated version, and then there's a live action movie. And you want to make an adaptation of something, but they are adaptations. You being strict to the source material has done many movies any good. You want those filmmakers to be involved creatively, and you want there to be some, I know it's a term that's not popular, but you want there to be some compromise there. That's how stuff works out. You shouldn't, we've gotten into this before, and this isn't the question, but you should be careful about poo-pooing every idea you hear coming out in rumors out of some project, because you're an audience and you don't always necessarily know what you want. You know what I mean? So you shouldn't be so resistant to, whatever, Mr. Fantastic or whatever wouldn't do that, and I hate this now, and I'm going to sign a petition. It's like,
do you guys, are there any cinematic universes that you think that you wouldn't mind seeing? How about there could be like a, going off of last week's, we could have a Jane Austen cinematic universe.
There should be a Jane Austen cinematic universe. If they can do. There was a really cool British TV show called Dickensian, which was the Dickens, all the characters sort of in London being mixed in this ensemble drama. It was hard to pull off, but it was a neat idea, and it was a pretty well done show. You could do that with Jane Austen, although it'd be tough because those characters are really a lot alike, and if you put them all together, being able to differentiate them might be tricky.
Yep.
But I'll tell you a great one that if I could be given unlimited amount of money to do whatever I wanted, I would do F. Paul Wilson's. It's a combination of things, and this is what makes it even more brilliant. A combination of his Adversary cycle and his Repairman Jack novels. Repairman Jack is a private detective in New York who solves paranormal mysteries. That's about as exciting as it sounds. It's really, really great stuff. And Repairman Jack is a minor character in his End of the World 5-book Adversary cycle, which starts with a movie that I love called The Keep. They'd have to redo that, obviously, but because it's nothing like his novel. But that stuff is fantastic and would make just a spectacularly good HBO series. Unfortunately, if you can't turn Stephen King's, gunslinger novels into an HBO series, then I don't know how you could possibly get someone interested in doing the Adversary cycle. But that's mine. I really would like to see that done.
Yeah, I suppose. So also sort of, we were talking about cinematic universes. There's sort of a Stephen King, Stephen King sort of, because he populates everything around the same area in Maine, in Castle Rock. There is, there's some network had a Castle Rock show.
Still has it. Hulu, I believe.
Is it Hulu?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'm like that just popped in my head.
That already exists. It doesn't have every character in it because it's like a lot of things. Rights are spread all over already, but it has the ones it can conglomerate in a rather interesting story. It's fairly intimate. It doesn't feel like a broad, expanded universe, but because how could it in this tiny little coastal town? But it's cool. It's right along that idea, and it's not a bad show at all.
Sure. Any universes you want to see, Bryan, off the top of your head?
Yeah, right off the top of my head, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman's Dragonlance, their world of Corinne would be, for me, as a fantasy setting, it's definitely it's not Tolkien, right? Which makes it, I love Tolkien, by the way. There's a lot of
it's not the standard bearer
it's not
high fantasy.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Here's a great,
and it's not the Game of Thrones sort of chamber drama with dragons either. It's a broad outdoors kind of fantasy adventure.
Yep. And it gives you all sorts of, very human characters that have interpersonal problems with not only each other, like here's the party of heroes and there's strife among the party, right? But there's also, people who are struggling with larger problems growing up or growing into whomever they are. And then the world itself has got issues that sometimes interact with the characters and sometimes there's a lot there. I think something with Weiss and Hickman and then all the other additional authors, there's like 100 and something novels, 190 something.
It would cost $1 trillion.
Yeah, but you could start with like Chronicles and move forward from there.
Work your way up. Yeah.
And there might be a way to combine some plot lines and some things. So, all right.
Yeah, well, to me, he's like he said, there's enough there that you just, if you start at the beginning carefully, you'll never run out of that stuff.
Just the War of the Lance.
Yeah. How you conjure up that stuff in a photo real way would be a trick, and it couldn't be a animated thing, I don't think.
Sure. Nope. All right. Well, I think for time reasons, I'm just going to leave it there, and we're going to no, Tickertainment Trend Tracker. We're done. No, stop it. Okay, we're going to get you next time. Okay. So, all right. So, but we're going to leave it with that. Bryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
It was great to have you here. Great to see you again, my friend.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, both of you. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Next week. Next week is our movie club, isn't it, Ryan?
Yeah, movie club meets next week.
Yeah, movie club meets next week, and
we'll have Shauna with us, and we're going to talk about the Wall Street movies of the late 80s.
Movies, and not like the movie Wall Street, even though we will talk about the movie, like the movies about Wall Street and the stock market.
Or there's three of us. There's three movies. If you've been paying attention, you know how the club works.
Yep. So a movie club next week on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. And I think for that we will see you. Thanks again, Bryan, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you for listening to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.